Good morning, Keller Williams. Sorry, this video is a little fuzzy. We're still working on an old computer here. It's January 31st and video number 2 of the morning here. So we're going to roll these out pretty close to each other. So yes, I've got the same shirt on. Yes, it's the same grainy video as the last one and same bright light behind me. So we're going to jump into a screen share here to minimize that and get you guys some explanation on the GRAR form changes for 2023. So a little background, you've got 8 associations here that make up our greater regional or the West Michigan Regional Forms Committee from Battle Creek, GRAR, Greater Regional Alliance, Jackson, Montcalm County, Mason, Oceana, Manistee, Southwest Michigan, West Central Board, West Michigan Lakeshore Association. So as we grow in size and the ability to go and list and sell homes across all of West Michigan, all these boards have kind of come together to merge some documents and make sense of what their documents used to say, so we can all be consistent throughout West Michigan. Now, escalation clauses. So those have been a thing for a number of years. Probably 3 or 4. I remember writing one back in 08 or 09. I don't take credit for inventing the escalation clause, but I know there weren't too many people doing it back then either. So they added language here to identify exactly how these things escalate. So buyer agrees if any competing offers include an escalation clause that any increase in price in a competing offer will cause buyer's offer to escalate as set forth in the preceding sentence. So what that means, according to the rationale here, is there seemed to be confusion about how far an escalation clause would take the price. And so with that, you have some felt that the escalation clause would escalate above the highest offer and stop there, while others felt that the escalation clause would continue to leapfrog over each other until the maximum identified price was reached. So an example, what they're saying here is that the latter version of this applies. So if we have a $200,000 house, offer 1 says they have a maximum of $220,000. Offer 2 says that they have a maximum of $225,000. Maybe you have a 3rd or 4th offer in there. It would escalate to $220,000, and whatever that amount is, like $221,000. That next offer would escalate to $221,000. What it doesn't say is that it would stop at $200,000 or $201,000. They continue to leapfrog over each other. You may have 3 in play there. If there's any confusion on this, see me, but I think it adds some clarity to the fact that they do continue to leapfrog over and above the next highest price. So purchase agreement, not a lot of changes here, just eliminating in section 3 regarding the seller's disclosure statement that the seller would certify to the buyer that the home is in the same condition as disclosed on the disclosure statement. It was redundant in section 33, and the seller can agree to inform or not inform, which I think we should always inform. But keep in mind that any changes to that seller's disclosure statement, let's say you go pending, have inspections done, and you got a bad roof, it's leaking, that does need to be amended on your seller's disclosure statement, and it does need to be redisclosed. So again, we have an obligation to disclose material defects no matter what. So saying, hey, don't send me the inspection report because I don't want to see it, does not limit you or your seller's liability from having to disclose things. So paragraph 12 regarding assessments. So this always had a choice. It's a little bit murky to me and probably one of the tougher things for me to explain to people, but you've always had this choice to either pay the entire balance or all installments of assessments that become due and payable on or before. So let's say you have a condo association that says, hey, we've assessed you $12,000 due in 3 $4,000 installments over the next year, and you're in month 3 and only $4,000 is due currently. You still have the ability to make that seller pay all of it or just the current installment. That's what those 2 check boxes are. Now they've added this language: seller has an ongoing obligation through the closing to disclose to the buyer any known pending assessments, including but not limited to mandatory utility connections, benefit charges, and condominium special assessments that have not been previously disclosed to the buyer in writing. So you go to your annual meeting and say, hey, we haven't gotten written notice of this out yet, but the board has decided that we are going to assess $12,000 for roof repairs. That should be disclosed. So the rationale on this is the revision is intended to prevent unpleasant surprises after closing. This does happen a lot with condominiums. If you're unfamiliar with the term benefit charges, it's used to somewhat regularly in the South and Southwest Michigan purchase agreements to refer to a special assessment. So a new street or paving charge, for example, that will ultimately benefit the homeowner in some way. This same revision will now appear in the vacant land purchase agreement as well. So keep an eye out in there. They are changing a little bit of language in regards to inspections. They've taken out the notice to terminate by written notice to the seller. Now, keep in mind, we still need to give written notice to terminate, but they've changed it up a little bit in that Section A would say terminate this agreement by written notice to the seller. Very consistent there, and receive a buyer refund of the earnest money, or make a written proposal to the seller to correct those unsatisfactory conditions, which proposal must be in the form of a proposed addendum and must be signed by the buyer in order for it to be effective. So no more texts or emails that say, hey, is the buyer willing to put on, or the seller willing to put on a new roof? So if you see these changes here, and the rationale is, since this is a paragraph where the seller may terminate the agreement if the buyer asks for repairs, this revision adds an extra layer of protection for the buyer and requires a signature from the buyer on an addendum. So you could float that text out there and get a yes answer on a new roof, but ultimately you have to have an addendum for any written proposal other than termination. You can still terminate by text or email. Buyer hereby terminates due to inspections. Get your mutual release drawn up, we'll sign it and get it over to them. But in written proposals regarding repairs, price reductions, closing cost credit, must be in writing and signed by the buyer on an addendum. It prevents inquiries from being considered official requests or proposals. So there's actually been some court case on that because you get, hey, would they be willing to put a new roof on? And then maybe the text is misinterpreted and somebody shoots back, well, we're going to terminate. And so at this point, let's get those in writing and get them signed before emotions or snap judgments get responded to in a text or an email. So a couple other things that we have coming, other changes, buyer's acknowledgement and release. So this was formerly known as the acknowledgement and release, was renamed the buyer's acknowledgement and release, and is more easily located in West Michigan Regional Forms Library, but it is in your loops, it is in DocuSign. It should be used in these four instances. If your buyer is waiving inspections and investigations, they're making their earnest money non-refundable, they're putting down more money as an appraisal gap waiver or offering that, or they're making a sight unseen purchase. So again, we just want your buyers protected. We want you protected in the event that something goes awry after closing and they come back and say, hey, you didn't tell me I needed an inspection. And we say, yeah, you decided to waive it. It says right here. So this is very good protection for you as a buyer's agent, should be used if your buyer's waiving any of these things. So VA inspection, wood destroying insects. First note, that's a honeybee. Honeybees are not wood destroying insects. They make honey and they need to be protected, not killed. So aside from that, GRAR, in the event of VA financing, seller will pay for the inspection for termites and wood destroying insects. You can see this is deleted. VA amended the position last year that veterans, the positions the veterans didn't have to pay for, or could not pay for pest inspections and required repairs in certain states. We changed it. It now says this is a win for veterans who are attempting to write competitive offers and knowing that the sellers had to pay for repairs or inspections for wood, your termite inspection or wood destroying insects. So small change there. If you're doing a lot of VA loans, that is fairly consequential and hopefully helpful to you. One party show and sell agreement. We've been asked a lot. We have a show and sell agreement in our forms. but it doesn't, like if you have a seller that you want to represent, you can use this form. Somebody comes to you and says, hey, bring me a buyer, but it's really your seller that you're representing. I think this is a better form to use for that. If you have questions on this, you want to go over it, let me know. We may do a deeper dive on this in a separate video at some point, but it is considered a show and sell, which we have our own, but you can use this to represent a seller that may even have their own buyer. So any questions, obviously myself or Pam over at GRAR regarding form changes. So hopefully this brings some clarity to it. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out and we will see you later. Thanks.